soil. What you see right here, what's in it?
Minerals, a lot of minerals.
Minerals like what?
Let's see. So,
You're absolutely right.
I would
What?
know. I don't know.
Oh, okay. Well, so the first thing, soil is broken down rock, weathered rock. Any kind of rock eventually can weather, whether that happens through volcanic action, through wind, through storms, through rain, it doesn't matter. It all works to break down the minerals smaller and smaller. So eventually you get a lot of small particles in the soil. But when I say small particles, that means that, relatively speaking, some are huge and some are very tiny. And scientists have defined the minerals in the soil only by size. It doesn't matter what kind of parent rock it is, whether it came from a volcano, whether it came from a mountain, whether it came from a beach, doesn't matter. Any broken down mineral is defined by being, in scientific terms, large, medium, or small. And all large breakdown material we call sand. All small, medium material we call silt, and all small material we call clay. Anything larger than sand is gravel or boulders. Anything smaller than clay doesn't really exist any longer, because the particles I'm talking about are already so tiny that, except for sand, you can't see the other ones individually. We won't have time today to do a test to see what kind of particles of how many percent sand, clay, and silt there are. But you can feel it in your own soil when you are working with soil. The best soil is 1/3, very roughly, 1/3 sand, 1/3 silt, and a bit less than 1/3 clay. And together they come together and they are called loam.
Loam?
Loam. Here.
Oh, there it is. Loam. Okay.
Loam.
Wow.
All right, cool.
So I'll get back to that in a moment. So, but that is only a small part of what's in soil. First of all, an ideal soil consists of half nothing. An ideal soil has the sand, silt, and clay here, and on this side, the other half, it's a void. And this is not a very accurate representation, because the particles, a sand particle might be as big as a wheelbarrow, whereas a clay particle might be smaller than a tennis ball.
Wow, is that big of a difference?
That's huge, yes. And so an ideal soil will have a lot of those particles, but it will have a lot of voids in between, spaces in between. And those can fill with either water or air. But that's only the beginning of what's in soil. Now we have organic matter, humus, the stuff that you see here, and that breaks down further and further. And ideally, we like to see at least 5% in soil. And some soils have much more.
How can you tell? Excuse me. How can you tell how much there is by look? Yeah.
When we do our test, probably next week, we'll just take a bunch of soil, shake it in a jar with water. The sand will settle within a minute. The silt will settle within a couple of hours, and the clay will settle within a couple of days.
I see.
But that's, again, this is only the very beginning.
Can you see the layers once they're all settled like that?
Oh yeah.
Oh, that's
And we measure them, we put stripes there, and then we have a nifty soil triangle, and that measures the amount of clay from 0 to 100%, the amount of silt from 0 to 100%, and the amount of sand from 0 to 100%. So, and then this is subdivided many times, but we usually end up somewhere in here. And so that indicates the loamy soil. Now, if it's very different, if, for example, there's a lot of clay in the soil, then you couldn't even walk through the soil. You would walk and the clay would stick to your shoes and you couldn't get it off. Clay is, the particles are subdivided because they have completely different characteristics. Sand, everything goes through immediately. Okay, so now we're going to test some soil. And okay, so add this. Yeah. Just leave it standing.
Oh, just leave
We're going to be repeating what you're doing. So don't worry, okay? Don't worry. Yeah.
Okay, well, we can fill it with water and then add a few drops of the
Soap?
soap.
Okay.
The clay won't settle for at least a day.
Okay. So all this bottom right here, that's sand?
Yes.
Okay.
Oh yeah, that's very clear.
Okay. That's a lot of sand.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, and you can tell the house, and then there's 2 layers, right? Or is that just
The silt should
settle in a
start
few
becoming
hours?
clear.
Yeah.
The clay is way too early to see.
Yeah.
What you do is you take some soil. Okay, let's make a little patty. Well, you have to give it some credit. It's still it clings together.
What does that mean?
Being hard, it's so soft we can stick our hands in it and we can open it and we can see lots of organic material. We can see the holes that the earthworms made. We can see how the soil immediately soaks up a lot of water and hangs onto it. So even if it doesn't rain for a month here, there's still some water in the soil. So good soil is fantastic to work with.
And Peter is very humble and is not sharing, but this used to be just a little hill like this, like the house next door. And Denny gave us the idea, rather than doing a terraced orchard, to build the urbanite wall, the broken concrete wall. You'll see pieces of broken concrete we're going to be using for things. And then to level that soil. Here's our expert. Way back, Warren Montague, the Crips kids, those boys. And then we started, ever since I moved here, even before I knew Peter, I had a couple of fruit trees, and I always bought organic. This land has been organic for 46 years now, front, back, sides. Story I'll share with you over lunch or whatever, what led me to it. But Peter said you don't need to buy fertilizers if we did what he said, and then mulch. Now, mulch is a blanket that keeps water from evaporating. And now there's this whole new thing called dry farming. And I think dry farming is nothing more than what Peter is teaching. Make sure you've got earth that is really arable or friable or plantable, whatever the words are, to grow life in, or bring it back to life, which we're going to do that also, to stuff that needs it. And then just letting life do its cycle. What happens? We die, we go back into the earth, and the water evaporates back into the ethers, and it starts to, what did somebody say? The carrots you're eating may be Cleopatra's nose or something. That's life. The trees die and they go back in the earth and they feed the next. And we'll let Peter say more about that another day. So all of life is a cycle. And if you stay with that cycle, which is what regenerative agriculture is, you don't have to buy chemicals. And part of that cycle is animals grazing the land, and their poop, like our poop, becomes fertilizer. In China they call it night soil. In Africa, I think I told some of you the story of how the village keeps propagating and having food for the people by having a pit dug that they all excrete in, urine and poop, and that once it's filled, they cover it, let it, work itself a little, and then they start planting trees. And so they have, a whole thing and food and so on that's done per, I'd say not raised bed, but kind of that idea per area. So this is how people have lived for centuries. And as we started to get more and more, as Peter, where I left off, when he was saying it started bringing all the diseases, the more we started to control nature rather than collaborate with nature. And we're working to to collaborate with nature here. And I've seen farmers, because we're running out of phosphorus, and urine, piss, is full of phosphorus. And so they have areas where they urinate in. They have the cows, the horses, whatever, sheep, goats, so they poop. So they're putting a lot of minerals back in that way too. I'm thinking of getting a composting toilet, which are legal now in LA, and having that where in Sweden they take all of where we have trash trucks, sanitation, they have trucks that go, like the people who have the pools in the ground for poop, septic tanks, and they suck that out right so that they can keep filling their tank. Well, in Sweden, I think I saw about 10, 15 years ago, a video, they collect all of that from all of the apartments and all, and then go spread it in pasture land that's got a lot of sun, and in 2 years it's killed any parasites in it, and now they have the sludge that they use for fertilizer. So know that the little bit I've learned about the county now, we do purify even poop water, our waste for clean and drinkable water. And I think they're gonna, when I first moved out here, there was a Fedco before Costco, and they were selling the sludge for, I bought it for my rose bushes because I've always been in love with roses. And then after a while, they couldn't sell it anymore because it was like, ooh, that's human poop that's been cleaned and processed and so on. Oh well. But as the earth is changing, as we're changing our mother, it will probably start being, and I think I don't have enough research yet to say that, but I get the feel from things I'm reading, where you're going to throw all this sludge after you've cleaned the poop water. And so they're going to start cleaning it and selling it, because everything's about selling and making money, and especially when you don't have enough of the stuff. So I know that one of my workers here has a discreet corner that's far away from everybody and everything, and he urinates here, discreetly, because we've seen videos of this where farmers are doing this, the husband, the wife, the kids, whatever, are getting it back into the soil that way. And again, these people don't look like they're dying, and they've been doing it for years. So unless you've got radioactive medicine in you, or you've got something really horrible, urine is usually sterile. Yeah. Okay. More you want to say? Because lunch is almost ready.
Finished here.
Okay. And we're going
So this is what you can do with any garden soil, any time.
That's good. It made a perfect ball.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
So this is the beginning of gardening. Is pulling out the weeds first, right?
Yes.
And then testing the soil for
What's in it?
yeah.
This will be
Okay.
we'll put on a trophy.
And then so what's next?
What's
we're
next?
closing for today.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Arthur's to eat.
Huh?